Okay, welcome to our discussion of Section 5 of 10 Ways to Think About Writing Pink Houses and Choruses, Keeping Your Reader With You. So, at this point, we've got all the details we need. We've identified our target audience. We know to stay focused on those things, and we're trugging along. So, this one is going to be about topic sentences and thesis statements and all that little signposting that you should be doing as a writer to keep your audience with you. So Reed's going to start off saying, you may have watched writing teachers go totally ballistic over thesis statements and topic sentences. Even though some teachers insisted they weren't requiring any kind of set formula, how can this be? What's with all of this upfront information? So there's a couple things going on here. One, I will absolutely go totally ballistic over thesis statements. Topic sentences to a lesser degree as well. She is 100% right about that. These things are incredibly important, especially in academic writing. Two, when you think back to the Unit 1, the Section 1 discussion where it's like, well, as long as you are adapting to your audience and purpose, all those rules of writing, they don't really matter. That doesn't mean you can hand wave literally everything. So there's always going to be reader expectations depending on the kind of writing you're doing. So you can imagine if you buy a horror novel, a book where the specific purpose of reading it is to feel all spookied and get all scared, and then the author delivers nothing spooky or scary, what that is it's a disappointing horror novel, a failure of a horror novel, maybe not even actually a horror novel at all, depending on what it tries to call itself. So every different genre of writing, novels, short stories, poems, even emails, text messages, they all have these reader expectations about what is appropriate. In your academic writing, it's not really appropriate to use incredibly condensed, like contractions in speech or acronyms or things like that. Whereas in text messaging, it is the norm. So it's not that all rules of writing can just be hand waved away, but it's also that the kind of writing you're doing, it has reader expectations around it. For academic writing, some of those expectations are you will have a thesis statement. Your paragraphs will have topic sentences. Now that's not a thing in all kinds of writing where, if you go read like a fantasy novel, their paragraphs might be rich and descriptive, but don't necessarily have strict topic sentences that describe what the rest of the paragraph's about, or a thesis statement and an introduction at the beginning of the novel. It's like that doesn't work like that. But in academic writing, it 100% does, and for all your essays, it 100% does. So these are things that you should absolutely keep in mind. Now, the metaphor that Reed is going to use for why this stuff is important in terms of academic reading or academic writing, that imagine you are driving down the interstate at 65 miles per hour, a blistering, neck-breaking 65 miles an hour, with three friends from out of town, and suddenly you say to them, hey, there's that amazing pink house. Well, what happens in this scenario? Because the pink house is already right there, you're already passing it. Reed is going to claim that probably there's a lot of whiplash-inducing head swiveling. Someone's elbow ends up in someone's ribs. Maybe one of your friends gets a glimpse. Nobody really gets a chance to see it because they didn't have a warning that something was going to happen. For an Alabama example of this, imagine you're going north on 65 and you're going past that classic Alabama "Go to church or the devil will get you" sign. That's one of my favorites. But instead of this absolute disaster that happens in the car when you tell them about the pink house, but it's already right there, instead you say something like, hey, coming up on the right here in about 2 miles, there's an amazing, huge pink neon house. Are those adjectives in the right order? That sounds awkward. I might just be my COVID. Watch for it. If you warn them ahead of time, they're ready. They know what to look for. They know where to look. And they're going to see what you want them to see. So, as writers, we advise our readers in a similar way. This doesn't always need to be in thesis statements or topic sentences, but these things really help your readers figure out where they are in whatever point you're trying to make. Now, some things you may have heard, one of the rules that you may have heard of writing is don't repeat things in your essay. It gets boring. One, I am very against the idea that every essay needs to be this beautiful, interesting, and exciting and not boring thing. It is okay to just communicate information without making your reader go, ooh, that's interesting. That's sometimes not the point of academic writing. It's not to entertain, it's to, oh, I discovered this thing. I have this idea. I'm going to communicate it to you so you can understand it. People place way too much emphasis on interest and novelty in a style of writing where it's like sometimes trying to make it interesting or novel will be at odds to what our purpose is. That's just a human flaw, and you see it everywhere in all disciplines. And I'm very much just okay, sometimes we're just trying to communicate stuff. We don't have to give it pizzazz. But this rule is a thing that I certainly heard where it's like, don't repeat things in your essay. You've said it once. You don't need to say it again. Well, there are some exceptions to that. And in this case, Reed is going to use how many different analogies are there in this? But I think it's just two. She gets rid of the pink house real quick. No, there's also Jingle Bells. So there's three. She's going to talk about, think about a beer advertisement during a football game or something like that, where it's like, beer, sports car, beautiful woman, wonderful friends. And a lot of beer advertisements are basically the same thing. Dude drinks a beer, has a sports car, gets a beautiful woman, has all these friends. It's a party all the time. Everyone's having fine. But these ads repeat themselves. Beer, sports car, beer, sports car. In order to absolutely 100% sure that you get the point. You can't miss the point because they've been very specific about it. Something else Reed is going to note is humans are a lot more resilient to repetition than you think. So if we think about a song like any pop song, and she's going to use Jingle Bells, when we get to the chorus, we don't get bored by the repetition usually. Typically, the chorus is one of the first, or only, part of the song that we learn and can sing along with. And so we get to the chorus and we go, aha, I know this part. And so it's repeated, but we know this part. And that makes it comfortable. That makes it more easy to engage with. All that kind of stuff. So your thesis statements and your topic sentences, they are signposts to let the reader know it's coming up. And the repetition in them also regrounds your reader so they know where they're at in the essay. So things like if you have a complex point that you're trying to make, if you only say it once or twice, like in the last paragraph when you're summing things up, or maybe in your thesis statement, which is supposed to be the point of your essay, your reader might actually miss it entirely because it's not sufficiently signposted throughout the stuff, throughout the essay. So your topic sentences also help let your reader know where they're at throughout that journey. So it's like thesis statement. Hey, here's the road trip we're going on. We're going to go to these 3 beautiful places. We're going to go to the Grand Canyon. We're going to go to the Rockies. We're going to go to Death Valley. We're going out west. And then your topic sentences will let your reader know where you're at in that journey. Aha, the topic sentence for this paragraph says, we're at the Grand Canyon now. And so it's, okay, that's what this paragraph's about. I know where I am in this trip. My next topic sentence, okay, we're crossing the Rockies. All right, I know where we're at because I've been told we're going on this trip. We're going to see these things. Paragraph 1, we found thing 1. Paragraph 2, we found thing 2. Paragraph 3, now we're in Death Valley. I know where we're at. So that kind of signposting can be repetitive, but it can also let your reader know exactly where you're at in the essay or where they're at in the essay so they don't get lost and they can follow along with what you're saying. These are simple examples, but as you get into your junior and senior year, where maybe you're writing about significantly more complex topics, it becomes easier to get lost. Like, think about the academic readings that you've got to do and how easy it can be lost in those, how easy it can be to get lost in those and maybe lose somebody's point. Well, you're going to be writing similar kind of stuff about similarly complex topics. Maybe you won't be writing English essays about literature or whatever. Maybe you'll be writing a history essay. Maybe you'll be writing a lab report for some experiment you're doing in a bio or a chem class or something like that. In order to keep your reader along with you, you're going to want to use good topic sentences, good thesis statements in certain formats. And like lab reports, you'll be using like section headings, so it's very clear to your reader what you're talking about at any given time, so they don't feel lost. That repetition throughout the essay where it's like, hey, coming up, I'm going to be talking about this. Hey, now I'm talking about this. Hey, remember when I talked about that thing? That's perfectly fine. So one of the issues that you might have looking at your own essay is that you have been dealing with this information a lot. You brainstormed it up. You organized it. You drafted it. You looked at it and went, oh, that needs to be rewritten. You rewrote that information. So you have read your essay dozens of times. And you read your own mind, like we saw in section 2. So you already know what this information is. So you're going to get antsy about repetition long before your readers will in maybe the one trip they have through the essay. So imagine that you've gone through your essay 3 dozen times and you're like, I'm going to cut some of this out because I already know what this is all about. Like, this makes perfect sense to me. Well, of course it makes perfect sense to you. You're the writer. Your reader, who might go through your essay once, they need those signposts. So you have to keep that in mind, that your perspective on what your writing is and how repetitive it sounds is going to be vastly biased and very different than a first-time reader's experience. So that kind of repetition, that kind of signposting where it's like, okay, my thesis statement says we're going to talk about these 3 things. And at the first paragraph, I say, here's thing 1. My next paragraph is going to be about thing 2. And then the second paragraph starts, well, now we're talking about thing 2. It's like, okay, it sounds like I'm hitting the same points over and over again. That can be pretty repetitive. For your reader, it's going to be fine. The other thing to note about this is part of what's going to make your work maybe sound more repetitive in this class is that our essays are comparatively short. We don't really cover like dozen plus pages in 1010. So it's going to sound more repetitive by just that alone, where the paragraphs are following very close to each other when you're signposting this information. However, it might be the case that, let's go back to our road trip metaphor. I'm going to tell you about when I went to the Grand Canyon and then crossed the Rockies and then went to Death Valley. Well, that's in my thesis statement, it's in my introduction, and then I start talking about the Grand Canyon. And I talk about the Grand Canyon for 3 pages. Maybe I have many paragraphs about all the different and wonderful things I saw when I was there. Then we don't get to crossing the Rockies until like page 3 or 4 of the essay. And then, I've got paragraphs about that I want to talk about, how beautiful and majestic and all the other whatever it is that I might want to say. And then I end in Death Valley, and by the time I get to Death Valley, I told my reader about it, page 1 introduction. My reader's not seeing it again until page 6 or 7 in the essay. And so there might be a lot of time between, in longer essays, there might be a lot of time between when you said something and when your reader sees it next, several pages later. And especially in academic writing, several pages of dense, detailed text later. So all this repetition, it's really good for your reader, especially as your essays get longer, where it becomes much easier to get lost in them. So if you're writing like a 20-page paper, like you go to grad school, you're writing 20, 30-page papers, you're having a good time. You bring some ideas up in your introductory paragraph or paragraphs, like maybe you're having whole introductory sections at that point. You're just doing all the writing. But some of those ideas, you don't actually address them until like page 17. And so it can really help to put little remembrances where they fit in the writing throughout there. It's not going to be repetitive to your reader. It's going to keep them on track for the ideas that you're talking about and how they all link together. So I encourage you to have strong thesis statements, strong topic sentences, maybe even section headings and longer writings. So you could see that what Reed has done here, if we want to even just look at this essay itself, every couple pages, oh, I want to talk about how writing's hard. Section 1 jumps out at you. It's not just even a topic sentence or a thesis statement. It's like section 1 right after the title. We're scrolling down. Section 2, I've switched topics. This makes it very clear where the different parts of the essay are. Section 3, like there's no question when I say go to section 3 that you're going to be able to find section 3 without having to, you don't have to be like, okay, where does she start talking about the little green ball? It's like, no, just look for the section header. This kind of thing makes it very easy to find where I'm at in the essay, and then we can cover those sections. Similarly, in your essays, those topic sentences really help. I will say that some of Reed's topic sentences, like if I look at this, the concept is actually pretty simple if we step out of writing arena for a minute. If this was a good topic sentence, then it should say, we can demonstrate this concept if we step out of the writing arena and think about what it would be like to see a pink house. Because this paragraph is about what it would be like to see a pink house. So Reed's own topic sentence here is probably what I would call insufficient. But these are very important, both as signposts. They also help you as the writer. So if you have good topic sentences, then you, the writer, know what belongs in that paragraph. And then you can like cut things out or add things in or move information around. It's like, okay, if this is my paragraph about the Grand Canyon, all that, anything I have to say about the Grand Canyon, I'll put it in there. Or if this is my paragraph about a pink house, all that information I have about a pink house goes in there. Your thesis statement for your essay, same thing. You're going to hear me say this when we talk about thesis statements. It's like a little guiding light for the rest of your essay. If you can't link it back to your thesis statement, you really need to question whether or not it belongs in whatever piece of writing that you're doing. If you can't link a sentence back to your topic sentence in some way, you really need to question whether or not it belongs in that paragraph. Maybe it still does. Maybe it doesn't. That's just a consideration that you should have. So there's no hard and fast rule, but if your topic sentence says, here's my paragraph about pink houses, and then you have a big, like you got 3 or 4 sentences about like Sesame Street in there, probably doesn't belong in there. We'll see this more in the paragraph video itself. I don't know whether it's before or after this one. Things are recorded kind of out of order. But topic sentences, absolutely use them. They help me, the reader, know what the heck your paragraphs are about. They help you, the writer, know what the heck your paragraphs are about. Because that's one of the big things I see in student writing is a lot of stuff crammed into a single paragraph. No clear topic sentence, no clear, oh, here's what this paragraph should be about. So we'll also see that in the example essay when we get to that, I think in a week or two. Not entirely sure. But that's section 5 for you, where it's like, yes, thesis statements, topic sentences, totally important. These signposts are important. Reminding your reader as you go through your essay about the things you are going to talk about or have talked about, when you can find space to do that, 100% useful. That repetition, totally fine. The problem is probably your own perspective on your own writing because you've been looking at it like a lot. So Reed has this little promise down here. I'll end with this. I make the same promise. I promise to tell you no harm, no penalty if you're ever too clear about making your own main point. Chances are you're not going to be. But if you're ever just overly repetitive, I'll let you know, and I'm not going to penalize you for it. And that's section 5. If you have any questions, let me know. And I will see you in the next video.